I worked at a tattoo shop in Arizona, across the river from Laughlin, Nevada. It was February, and people were spending tax returns on tattoos. I don't remember the exact day, but it was crazy busy. I got stuck with a family and tattooed until about 3 a.m. They were generous. After all is said and done, I had about $2,000+ in my pocket. My wife had been waiting all night for me, so in a spur-of-the-moment decision, we decided to go across the river to the casinos and spend money. I don't gamble, don't really drink, and just never been interested in that stuff. But that night, it sounded fun. As soon as we got out of the car at the first casino, is when I noticed things were odd. The valet runs up to me and looks kinda confused why I'm in my car. Like, he even looked at my car and made a joke about, "Oh, this way you can probably just drive around." I was even more confused, and I told him I would park my own car and did so. As we walked into the casino, people were looking at me, like backing up and making room for me to walk by, and nodding at me and just acting weird. My wife was like, "What's going on, man? Why is everyone treating you like this?" At first, I wrote it off to people just being nice and doing their jobs and whatnot. But it kept getting weirder. People kept staring at me and holding doors. My wife is asking me if I have some secret life or something. It didn't register at the time, but one of the bartenders said, "It's strange to see you here this time of day." It was like 4 a.m. I thought it was just small talk. For hours, I gambled roulette and kept winning. I never played roulette in my life. All night and into the morning, people kept staring at me, looking away when I locked eyes. I even walked up to some dude that was looking at me and said, "What's up?" And he just said, "Oh, hey bro, I just noticed you, I'm sorry." I was shocked. This guy was legit nervous to be talking to me. I'm not famous or a gangster or nothing. We thought maybe because I tattooed a lot of people. But I usually recognize clients, and they always treat me like a friend. Another incident, while walking between casinos, I decided to get some smokes at this gas station. And when I walked in, everyone let me go to the front of the line. There were maybe 5 people, but they all looked at me, looked away, and the cashier just said, "Hello, sir." My wife is looking at me like, what is happening? I also got a personal tour of Don Laughlin's car collection. We were trying to see the cars, but forgot it was like 4 or 5 in the morning. But this old guy showed up at the entrance and just said, "Go ahead, nobody will care if you're in there." At the time, I assumed he just meant like we were harmless and no one would care. After that, I saw this weird old slot machine that only gave away silver dollars. But it only took silver dollars. I was excited, so I went to find where I could get silver dollars to put in the machine. And the cashier just didn't understand. I told her it was for the machine, and she was adamant that there is no machine like that. I went back to find it and couldn't. It was gone. People then started bumping into me, and when I looked at them, nobody cared anymore. I think I was the doppelganger. There were more little experiences, but in a nutshell, that's it. It also seemed to end when I noticed the daylight. I don't know. I've been thinking about it for a long time and it still bothers me. I don't look like anyone famous or infamous. I actually have a piercing through the bridge of my nose that makes me fairly unique and would be hard to get me confused with someone else. One of the things I constantly think about is I left with the exact same amount of money. We were dumping money into the machines, making crazy bets on roulette, buying food, and a lot of that money should have been gone. I'll start by saying I'm not proud of this, but I'm still alive and I would like answers. Tonight, I got off work and was extremely depressed. I've had issues with mental health my entire life. I got home to my ex-fiancée and remembered that the breakup was still fresh, and she had just told me that there was no way we'd be getting back together for the foreseeable future. I agreed, but I didn't really like the idea. After many family and friends' deaths this year, and so much pain that I don't care to describe, I decided tonight was the night. I sat and watched my ex sleep for a while, just to take in the peaceful nature of it. Then my daughter woke up and started crying, so I rocked her and said my goodbyes. Like I said, I'm not proud of it, but a suicidal mind works differently. I kissed her head, put her down, and walked away to get my gun. I loaded it and held it for a second. I remember specifically running my nail through the seams in the grip for a few seconds, and then I quickly put it to my head and squeezed the trigger. Then nothing. I opened my eyes after what felt like forever, and I was fine. The gun wasn't even in my hand anymore. I ran outside and laid in the rain after that, wondering if there was a God who spared me for some reason. And now I'm sitting here just confused. I don't take meds. I was completely sober and conscious, just very, very depressed. I probably won't try it again after that experience. Maybe I've got some sort of question to answer now, or a purpose, I guess. Has anyone else had this happen? What was this? I'll try to make this as short as possible, but I'll add some context first. It was 3 years ago this month. I was at the hospital with my 10-year-old daughter because my stepdad was dying and only had a couple of days to live. I had been there all day, and at 10:40 p.m., my mom said, "Son, it's almost 11. Go home, get some sleep, and I'll see you in the morning." I said okay, told everyone goodbye, and headed for the parking garage. As I pulled out of the parking lot and grabbed my phone to call my wife to let her know that I was leaving, I noticed it was exactly 11 p.m. The hospital is 58 miles away and is almost exactly an hour from my house. The 2-lane highway I took, I've been down a million times my whole life. I live in southern Illinois, and it's the fastest way to get to Kentucky where the hospital is. The first half of the drive is fairly flat, and then it is constant hills once you get to the Shawnee National Forest. It's extremely rural, with no streetlights, stop signs, or traffic lights the whole way, except one highway you drive over with a streetlight on the east side of the road, which is almost halfway to my house from the hospital. Anyway, me and my daughter were just driving over the Ohio River when I realized I really had to piss. With no gas stations or businesses until I get home, 55 miles away, I decide that worst case scenario, I'll hold it until the halfway point with the streetlight, pull off the road and take a piss. About 10 minutes into the trip, when I'm driving through a very straight section of highway with cornfields on both sides, a really dense fog comes out of the east cornfield and completely covers everything. It was hard to see any further than 30 feet in front of me, but I couldn't see anything on the sides of me. It was like driving through a tunnel. You can't see anything except forward. Because it was deer season, I wanted to be cautious, so I had my daughter sitting up and looking for deer from her side of the road, just in case. After another 20 minutes or so, this really strong feeling came over me. It was pure confusion and panic. I felt lost. I realized that I should have been to that streetlight by now, but I hadn't even made it to the hilly parts of the road yet. So I asked my daughter if she's seen any lights on the side of the road. No. Have you seen any other cars? No, I haven't even seen any other houses. I told her we just couldn't see them because of the fog and kept driving. Didn't want her to be freaked out like me. Then I realized we're at least 45 minutes into this trip. We haven't seen any cars, lights, and the road has been straight this entire time, so we must be lost. I pick up the phone to call my fiancée when the fog suddenly breaks, and my confusion goes through the roof when I realize we are just outside a small town, about 10 to 15 minutes from my house. While the town is on the way home, we never went up a single hill or around a curve. One curve on the way is almost 90 degrees, and the speed limit around it is 45 miles per hour, so there is no way to miss it. I spent the last 10 minutes driving home trying to rationalize what had just happened. The scariest explanation I had come to was I fell asleep and somehow managed to drive 45 miles up and down steep hills and around sharp curves with my daughter in the car next to me. As bad as that made me feel, it gave me some kind of relief, because it gave me an explanation of what just happened. That all changed once I got home. I parked the car, got the kiddo and her stuff, and was walking in the door to tell my wife sorry it took so long. Except when we walked in the door, she had a shocked look on her face and said, "How did you get here so fast?" Thinking she was being a smartass, I said, "Sorry, it was a weird drive. There was really bad fog and I couldn't see anything most of the way, and that's why it took so long." Her, "What do you mean it took so long? I just talked to you on the phone 20 minutes ago when you called and said you were leaving." Me, "That was over an hour ago. I called you at 11 o'clock. Her, "Babe, I know, but it's 11:20. I looked up at the clock and it was 11:20. Checked my phone, 11:20. Went to the kitchen and checked the stove, 11:20. Checked my phone again and I did call her at 11. I was freaked out, so I pulled her outside and quietly explained to her what had happened so my daughter wouldn't hear anything and become as freaked out as we were. We couldn't come up with any explanation, so we go to sleep because I had to be back at the hospital as early as possible. We never spoke about it again. We just forgot about it overnight. I didn't even remember it happening the next day. Then just about a week ago, all that changed. I was telling my wife about a comment I read on here about a girl and her parents road tripping. Coming up on some dense fog, they were lost, so they stopped at a gas station they'd never seen before. But some weird guy there just kept telling them to leave. Something about the story seemed really familiar to me. And then out of nowhere, my daughter says, "Dad, that reminds me of that creepy fog we drove through when Papa was in the hospital." I asked her what fog, and she was telling me in detail what happened and how she was scared because of how freaked out I looked. I remembered everything, which really freaked me out that I had forgotten what had happened. Then it all just came back to me at once. We talked about it, and we both remembered it the same way. The only exception being was she told me the look on my face scared her because she knew something was wrong when I thought I played the tough, fearless dad role to a T. I know it happened 3 years ago, but since I forgot about it, somehow I've only had a week to analyze it. The only things I've ruled out was the time changing. Where I live and where the hospital is are both the same time zone. My stepdad died in October and time didn't change until November. I honestly have no explanation for what happened, but I've thought about it every day since I remembered it a week ago. We were driving from Santa Barbara to LA in a hired car at night. We had to drive through some mountains. We pulled over into a pitch black car park while my wife sorted some blankets out for our toddler asleep in the back. Now, this sounds really cheesy, but it's true, so hey, I'll just type it out. I felt really uneasy in that car park. There was no one around apart from the busy mountain road. I sat there looking up through the glass ceiling, feeling nervous and couldn't wait to leave, when I saw a shooting star. Not just any star, but really huge, like from a movie. I was about to mention it to my wife when I noticed another car parked up in the corner to my left. It was deep in the forest shadows, just sitting there. I wasn't sure if it had just pulled in or I just hadn't noticed it before. But either way, I was silently itching to leave. With a small baby in the back in an area I didn't know, I was feeling watched and really vulnerable. I quietly hurried my wife up. Strangely, almost unable to speak, started the engine and turned the car around slowly, mainly just so we were moving more than anything. The parked car was now on my right, and at least now I was facing the exit to the main road. It was then I saw some movement near the car and I went cold. It looked like a silhouette of a man walking towards us, fast. I froze, then saw to my left another man on the other side, just as fast but much closer. Totally panicked, slammed my foot down without saying anything and screeched out of the car park. My wife screamed. The main road was busy with cars in both directions, and feeling the heat behind me, I quickly pulled out to turn left into the traffic. It was then a huge truck came over the ridge fast. Blinded by the headlights, we embraced for impact from the side. Honestly, key parts of my life flashed through my head and time slowed down enough for me to realize I'd killed my family. Cut to a second later, there are no cars on the road at all. It's dark, silent, and pitch black. We're slowly driving along the main road at about 20 miles per hour. All is quiet. We looked at each other and didn't say much for a while, until I just said, "I think we used up a life there." We've hardly spoken of it since. A very weird thing now is that I brought it up a while ago, and my wife could hardly remember it. Yesterday, I decided to drive to the mall. The one I go to is massive. It's circular, so you can drive around it. It has a massive car park on one side. So all seems normal on my way to the mall with my girlfriend, who is still in shock as I am, to be honest. We haven't really spoke about it since. So as we get there, it looks really quiet. There's about 10 cars there, so I'm questioning whether or not it's open, which is really weird, so we drive around the other side, just to see what's going on. And there's a few people about and a few cars, but nothing. So we decided to go around back to the first side where we normally park, and our plan is to walk to the entrance and see what's up. This is where it gets really weird. As we pull up around to the other side again, the whole car park is full. There's literally people walking about everywhere. People sat outside having coffee. There was even 2 ambulances. So very, very weird. Me and my girlfriend were unbelievably shocked. We were speechless. We literally sat in the car for 10 minutes just trying to get our heads around it. And I haven't felt right since, to be honest. The time difference for driving around was about 2 minutes. It would have been physically impossible for all those cars and people to get there after having been emptied. What happened? I would love to hear your thoughts so I don't feel like I've gone crazy. I've always heard about our world as we know it potentially being a simulation or matrix. Never did I actually feel like this could be true until this one incident happened. One day, after work, I plopped down on my bed, ready to watch some TV and just relax. I grabbed the remote and turned on the telly and started flipping through channels to find something good. While I was doing this, I put a cigarette in my mouth and was waiting to light it until I found a decent show. Staring at the screen, I suddenly hear something slide and fall off of my bedside table. I assumed it was my lighter because I was always dropping or knocking off my lighter. I thought to myself, well, shit, now I gotta reach down and pick it up. I'll wait until I find something to watch. I finally came across Family Guy, and even though it was a rerun, there was nothing else really decent playing at the moment. I turned to replace the TV remote down on the bedside table, and noticed my lighter is sitting there. Confused, I think, what was it that had fallen and made that noise then? I lean over and look down in between the bed and table and see a pair of batteries right next to each other and nothing else. I didn't think much of it until I picked them up and suddenly remembered that yesterday I had taken the batteries out of the remote to clean the inside of the controller and forgot to put them back in. Then I quickly remembered I had just used the remote to turn on the TV and flip through the channels. I hurry and open it up, thinking someone else must have put new ones in, and to my surprise, the remote was empty. No batteries. Once I made this realization, I tried to turn the TV off. Nothing. I tried to change the channel. Nope. I smirked and said out loud, "Oh, now that I know there's no way this remote can control the TV, it suddenly can't anymore? I either have telekinesis or I'm in some sort of matrix simulation." I've been apprehensive about posting this. I don't know if I'm wrong, and I don't want to be ridiculed for it, but this really strange thing happened to me, and everyone I know makes fun of me, but maybe you guys will understand. A few weeks ago, I was traveling by bus from Chicago to Milwaukee to see my girlfriend. If any of you have taken a Greyhound bus, you know that it's the shittiest experience, and usually you get a couple stories from the people on there. Anyways, the bus was scheduled to leave at 9:05, and the ETA was 11:30-ish. I'm at Union Station and I'm waiting, but it's late. The bus ends up arriving at 9:30, and we're driven maybe a mile or two until they stop us at the main building for Greyhound. We're told we need to wait until they're ready. So the time passes, and after a bunch of bullshit, we finally get leaving at around 10:05. So we're on the bus. I'm listening to a podcast, and I have my Google Maps on so I know how long we are away. At around 11 exactly, my Google Maps glitches, and the outside of the bus through the windows becomes complete blackness. The next thing I know, I see a building and we're there. My map said just a minute before we were still 40 miles away, and there's no way we should have been there that quickly. At first, I thought I was crazy, until I heard other people on the bus saying things like, "How did we get here so quickly?" Might not be a glitch, but something happened that night that I cannot explain. A decade ago, I was really depressed. My brother took me on a road trip that ended on an islet. There he went to take some pictures, and I was left alone facing a cliff and smoking my cigarettes. I thought to myself, what the heck? I should just take a step forward and end it all. I went on and looked down over the cliff, where I could see the sea raging against the rocks. Yeah, that would do it, I thought in silence. Then someone behind me told me to stop. I looked back, expecting to see my brother. That person surely sounded like him. To my surprise, it was someone exactly like me, except he was wearing a green hoodie. He came in my direction. He looked tired and sad. He took the cigarette from my hand and gave it a puff. "Go find brother. I'll finish it here." I felt as if all my sadness was being taken away, as if I could finally breathe again. He gestured me to go. At the moment I was leaving, he told me to buy a hoodie. "It gets really cold where you're going." I looked back at the edge of the cliff, but he was gone. Later that week, already in another town, I felt strong enough to go out for the first time in a long while. I went to a mall to eat something. At the first store, there it was. The same green hoodie my other self was wearing, for sale. I bought it, and I use it from time to time as a memento. I call it my hoodie of changing ways. This is one of those stories people find hard to believe, and I understand it. I never told anyone about this story before now. People tend to think of me as a crazy man, knowing the little I let them know about me. What I do know is whatever he was, glitch, time traveler, ghost, or doppelganger, that other me sure saved my life that afternoon. And the only way I have to thank him is keep living a good, honest life. So, it was the 4th of July, and my brother and I were setting off fireworks in the woods behind our house. We were passing back and forth an aim and flame cigarette lighter and lighting firecrackers and other small fireworks. It was around 2 in the morning, 5th of July. I left to go get something to drink and left my brother there lighting fireworks. I get back around 10 minutes later and he asks me for the lighter. I told him I didn't have it, I left it with him, and he was actively lighting firecrackers as I left. He says, "Yeah, I know, but I just gave it to you a couple minutes ago. Where is it?" I know my brother. This isn't something he'd lie about. We've talked about it many times over the years, and the story has never changed. The moon was bright that night, bright enough to see. He says he saw me in my same outfit, same face, same hair and everything. Apparently, the doppelganger said nothing, went up and put his hand out. My brother assumed it was wanting the lighter. He gave the lighter and whatever it was walked away, never said a word. These woods were privately owned by my family, far out in rural Texas. Nobody else was out there. And if they were, that doesn't explain how they looked exactly like me. We continued setting off firecrackers till around 4 in the morning, having to use a short cigarette lighter because the thing stole aim and flame. I'm writing this because I simply don't have an explanation for what happened. I seem to be the only one who cares enough to remember it. At the time, I was living in New Mexico with our grandparents. My family and I lived there temporarily before buying a house of our own. I was around 10 to 11 years old at the time, and I have 2 younger siblings, a brother and a sister. The house itself was on the edge of the village and was distant from the rest of the people. I shared a room with my brother and had separate beds facing the door to the room. The room itself was connected to a hallway that connected to the living room. It's important to know that the hallway had no exits besides going through the living room, and the other rooms lead to a bathroom and the master bedroom. There are no windows to crawl or exit out of to avoid being seen or heard. My parents went out of town shopping with my sister. The only people that were in the house were myself, my brother, and my grandmother. Me and my brother were in my room doing our own thing. I remember sitting out on the end of the bed. The door started to creak open slowly. I looked up to see who it was. It was my mother. She was hunched over, peeking into the room, scanning from left to right. Her eyes landed on me. Her eye lit up with shock. "Mom?" I said in a creaked voice. She held eye contact. She let her hand off the door and straightened her figure. Her clothes looked familiar, but they were the wrong color. It was all brown and had yarn scarves made from yarn. Her clothes had a similar texture. Something was off about her. The longer I looked at her, the more I noticed. Her skin was unnaturally pale, and her face had wide eyes with shock and frustration, like, I don't belong where I was. To this day, she has never gave me that face. It looked like she'd never seen me before. At this point, I stood up and repeated myself, "Mom, what are you doing here?" She glared at me with that same lifeless expression, backing up into the hallway. "Where are you going?" She walked down the hallway, still looking at me for a little bit. She turned her head as she walked out of my view. I was already walking up to the door as she went out of view, and I looked down the hallway to see where she went, but she was gone. I walked out into the middle of the hallway, frantically repeating the same phrase, "Mom? Mom?" My grandmother came to me and hugged me, telling me that I must be seeing things. Only if that were the case. I wish that I could say it was a hallucination. The only problem with that explanation is that an illusion does not open doors.